Hey guys, so just want to continue looking at my games against Coolthing, trying to figure out why I have not been able to beat Coolthing in a match lately. So here I am, I have the black pieces, and I just I'm playing a Sayyal, and Coolthing plays his interesting setup. I don't know that this has a name. I might just call it the Coolthing setup. But he plays this pawn structure and then he puts elephants on a3 and d3. Um, so, all right, so we get this far. I play b6. This is, from my point of view, my game's looking pretty normal. The white game is looking, I mean, it's just one of Coolthing's systems. c5, and we reach kind of a critical moment here where white plays c4. And in my mind, a move c4 has to be a mistake. The problem with c4, well, there's two big problems. One is that this knight gets this great outpost on b4. It might be possible to land an elephant there, but that's a little bit harder given that the black pawn's on d6. But it gives up the b4 square. But that's not a huge deal, right? Because white does have a first hand that can come in and cover it. But more important than that is that the c4 pawn is just super weak. Black has a straightforward plan: elephant a6, knight c6, knight a5, followed by this elephant sack on c4, and this is just going to destroy the white position. But I don't think I find the most direct way to take advantage of this. I play knight c6, and then after knight e2, I play bishop a6. And here finally, Coolthing senses, okay, this is really going downhill. So he throws in the move d takes c5, b takes c5, and now just plays knight d2. And from black's point of view, I have not achieved nearly as much as I wanted to because the c5 pawn blocks my attack on c4. So, I think that's a bit of an inaccuracy by me. I think c4, if I had to do it again, I would just take right away. And maybe then play bishop a6. Or although I could throw in knight c6, hit this pawn, knight e2, and then a forcing sequence, maybe play knight to a5 right away. So now I'm really hitting b3. Knight d2 looks obvious there to cover b3. And then just bishop a6. And this looks fairly dangerous for white, right? Because black's just threatening to take a bunch of times on c4. White can play rook c1. And then probably then rook ac8. So, again, just really, really putting pressure on this point. And it's not clear what white can do about this. Maybe there's some sort of tactical solution, maybe knight to c3, with the idea of after bishop takes c4, play knight b5. And then rook c6 runs into knight takes a6, or knight takes a7, forking these rooks. But of course, if I step off the file, then b takes is possible again. But even something like this only gets white so much. I just play a6, kick the knight out. Knight has to go away, and then knight takes c4 again. And it really looks like black is crashing through. I mean, here, the elephant's hanging, and knight e3 check, knight takes g2 are possibilities. So we have to go this way, and then I'm just going to play rook on b to c7 next. And white has to deal with these pawns. So I think that I did miss just a nice opportunity here. If I play c takes d4 immediately, this is just a nice opportunity to really get an overwhelming advantage with black really early on. And it's a shame that I didn't go this route because I don't know what Coolthing would have been able to do. But instead I played knight c6, and I just went this way because I wasn't really worried about this move. I thought, oh, well, you know, if Coolthing does that, then I'm just going to get this pressure on the b file. But the pressure on the b file is not quite as valuable because Coolthing is now just able to sink his elephant into b5, and there's, you know, eventually I'll be able to play a6. So eventually I'll be able to play a6 and maybe take, but Coolthing would just leave the elephant on b5. Um, but I still kind of have an advantage here. I play knight a5. I've got a lot of good pressure. Knight c3, so white's starting to consolidate a little bit. But now I bring the other knight in. I'm going to come in this way, take advantage of that b4 point. Furzian f2, and then I play d5. So I'm playing a little bit aggressively against this center. And you know, it's a logical thing to do. But I missed this next move from white, which is a really just kind of interesting shot. He plays rook take, or he plays elephant takes c5. And yeah, I just totally missed this. It's a very creative blow. The idea is just rook takes and b4. And so I ended up just going down a pawn. I turned it into a bit of a sacrifice with gain of time. So black is doing okay. You know, I turn it into this kind of creative sacrifice. But I just didn't see bishop takes c5 at all when I played d5. I hadn't seen this theme. And yeah, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't play d5. I think probably just knight c6. Maybe then, you know, something like king e2, then I just continue with knight to b4. And now that I've prevented this pawn from advancing to b4, then maybe next move I can try d5. So, you know, and I mean, I guess you know, I don't have to ever play d5. If I want, I can just kind of hang out, play e5, centralize the first hand or whatever. But probably I do want to try this at some point. But I can preface it. I can play king e7 and then rook d8 first if I want. So I didn't really take time to prepare the blow, and I suffered the consequence for that. After d5, there was a shot. And I just kind of played knight ec6. Okay, so I thought for about 20 seconds because I was surprised, and I tried this. And the sacrifice is not horrible for black. And I thought maybe I was going to get somewhere with this. What's kind of surprising, though, is that I can, if I want, I can just take on c5. Then after b4, I have the option of sacrificing the exchange. And I didn't see this either. I didn't see I could play rook takes c4. And with rook takes c4, well, if b takes a, then rook takes c3, and now black's just fine. White didn't get anything out of that. So white has to take the exchange this way. But then after knight takes c4, so black has an elephant and a knight in exchange for a rook. So it's a little bit of a material disadvantage, but black actually has really good compensation here because knight c6 is coming, targeting b4, and then followed by bishop d6, and so the b4 pawn is probably actually going to fall. And so white has to figure out what he's going to do about that. So you know, maybe just king e2, knight c6. But you know, something like rook b1 and just bishop d6. This pawn's falling. Maybe white can try to get some activity or something with e4. It's going to get a little bit sharp after d4 as a possible move. And then, you know, of course, takes is also possible. So just, you know, takes. rook here, and I guess white's going to come through on the d5 square, so king e7 takes here, probably this. So yeah, I mean, I guess black's down the exchange here, and this, it looks maybe a little bit uncomfortable for black. So I guess after e4, black would probably want to invest a little bit of time in seeing if d4 is a better move. Yeah, and it might well be. I mean, maybe knight a2 to try to hold the b4 pawn. And I guess among other things, black can play e5 here, and that's a pretty solid game. The elephant does a good job for now, at least defending the knight on c4. If it ever gets kicked by b5, maybe it would reroute to e6. So yeah, I don't know. Kind of a bizarre position. But I think black structurally has pretty decent compensation there, and I think it would be pretty hard to know which route is better, either the route that I went or this exchange sacrifice route. But I didn't really see this route. I didn't see after rook takes c4 I was threatening this knight, and so I basically forced this this position. But I might have still opted. I was kind of in a gung-ho mood, so I probably would have still tried to sacrifice. So takes, knight b4, d takes e6. So I've given up 3 pawns for an elephant here after rook takes c5. So white has these 3 pawns, one of which is probably going to fall in exchange for an elephant. But black has a lot of activity with some really good pieces. I'm threatening the knight on c3, so knight c4. I dropped the rook back to c6 because I guess I wanted to target the e6 pawn. This was probably just a coward. It was a coward's move, and I didn't really spend any time on it. I kind of think now rook c2 would have been the way to go. Well, I guess I can show you what I was worried about in terms of things that might happen in these lines. So, for instance, knight takes f6. This to me, I know it felt tenuous. So, for instance, king e7 here would just be met by knight d5 check, knight takes, and then king takes. So, I was worried about that kind of idea happening. And then, if I don't do anything, maybe e7 followed by this. So white has some threats, but rook c2, knight takes f6. I think I just would play rook on b to c8. I just try to hold the knight on, or I try to hold the rook on c2. And this white's up a bunch of material, but this looks kind of unpleasant to play in a blitz game. I mean, it might be unpleasant to play in any game. So king e2, probably followed by rook hd1 would be the move. King e7 there to drive the knight away. Looking at this, I mean, knight g8 doesn't work. That's just gonna leave the knight stranded. So knight e4, knight to e4. I guess black can play just king takes e6, even out the material a bit, which is probably a good idea. It's a little bit hard to think of exactly what else to play. Yeah, probably king takes e6, pawn h to d1. So material-wise here, white does have 3 pawns for an elephant, which is a lot of pawns, but the hope is, maybe this b pawn falls. So you know, if nothing else, maybe we can play like rook b2 here with black if we're running out of other ideas. Rook ab1, maybe double this way. And black is threatening to play knight takes b3 here because of the pin on the knight. So, you know, like maybe takes, rook b1, then I guess we have takes, knight takes b3. So here white has 2 pawns in exchange for an elephant. I mean, this kind of thing, it might be a slightly better endgame for white if white survives through to this point. But that's going to be kind of a tough endgame to win, and black even still would have a lot of activity. So I like rook c2 better, but instead I went rook c6. I felt a little bit more secure in that. So takes, king e7. Yeah, okay, and so knight on f to e4. And maybe here I start to go wrong a little bit. I take this open file, but ultimately it looks like at the end of this, white's going to end up being able to trade off material, trade off the rooks and deprive me of my activity. So even here, probably doubling along the c file is the right way to go, because king e2, maybe now just play king takes e6, and at least white doesn't have an immediate way to take off the rooks and black's pressure. So I think the pressure was important, and I think when I play this, instead of putting the rook here, and I allowed white to trade off a pair of rooks, I think I really did just kind of let up on the pressure. And yeah, I mean here, well, and I think here I really go off the rails. I played knight takes b3, which is honestly is just a terrible move, because rook takes, and then okay, I grabbed this rook, and then knight takes b3, and so now I'm down so much material, because I've given up the rook for a couple of knights. Yeah, and I don't think I was thinking clearly when I played knight takes b3. And see how long I took. Yeah, I took about 10 seconds, and I threw out knight takes b3. And I wasn't thinking very clearly. I think I was thinking about, okay, well, white's down to 20 seconds, and I felt the position was slipping away from me, so I just sort of threw out anything. But that was a poor decision by me. I could have thought for a little bit longer, and then I would have just seen that I was losing all this material. And if I'd seen that, then okay, I would have found, all right, just go back, you know, admit I was wrong. And then after takes, you know, maybe then king d1 or whatever with the idea of rook to c1. Then maybe king takes e6, rook to c1. And here I have a couple options. I can consider playing rook b2. It does allow white then to be able to penetrate, and I probably don't want that. But you know, in a time scramble, it might be worth it. And then of course, just you know, I can take these off the board and challenge white to find a way to win this. White has, white has a total of 3 pawns for an elephant, which is a lot, but you know, this knight on e4 is really white's active piece. These pawns are pretty well blockaded, at least for the meantime, and I'll have a couple of pieces to defend on the Furzian side. So I don't think the endgame is necessarily lost for me. I think I can probably put up pretty tough resistance here with the black pieces. But instead I kind of sensed like now or never and went for something a little more extreme. But the problem is just, yeah, rook takes c2, and then, after knight takes c2, knight takes b3, yeah. And so after knight takes b3, so rook takes c2, the other thing that we have to look at is, okay, well, what happens after knight takes a1? And when I saw this in the game, I think the problem for me is that I'm getting a knight trapped, and that's why I didn't go into it. Looking at it now, it's not immediately obvious to me what the issue was. So material-wise, we are keeping, all right, so one pair of rooks and 2 pairs of knights each. So white still has like 3 pawns currently for an elephant. I mean, among other things, white can play rook to c7, force black to take up this way, and then just play rook takes a7, threatening knight c5 and knight takes a6. This looks pretty nasty for black. Black is probably lost here. It's starting to look pretty lost. But maybe, maybe there's stiffer resistance to put up this way. I guess I do have to save this somehow. Can't really run it. Can't really run anywhere with a king. Maybe this elephant has to drop back. Let's see. Maybe just knight c4 or something, followed by ideas of knight c5 check at some point. Knight's maybe coming into b7 somehow. Just trying to cover a lot of squares around black's king. Knight to c5 check immediately also looks pretty good. Maybe followed by knight to d3 since the elephant's guarding it. That's just a way to maybe try to simplify a little bit. So knight takes a1. Yeah, I didn't end up going that route. Maybe I should have. Maybe there's more resistance there, because I'm not immediately seeing a way for white to trap the knights. For instance, rook c1. This knight comes back, and they're guarding each other. Same thing. Rook to b2, knight on a to c2, and black seems to still be in the game. So yeah, so after knight takes a1, it probably would be rook to c7 check, take, followed by rook takes a7. And with 3 pawns for the elephant, the black king being a sitting duck, probably this is winning for white, but the route that I ended up going with the 2 knights, that also seems to be something that probably white's going to win. So I do a little bit of dancing with this elephant. The white knights are going to hang out on d4 and e4. That looks pretty awesome for white. a6, white just ignores it. He's getting a passed pawn, so he doesn't really care if this elephant drops. And plus, knight c6 is threatened, so I play rook c8. White just plays king d2. Just takes and takes. This just probably helps white. Maybe I should have done it anyway. Maybe that's the best resistance, but bishop d6. So white's starting to come up. I'm trying desperately to generate some counterplay, and I do now finally get some counterplay. The rook comes in to c1, and white has to run back. So, and white's pretty low on the clock here. So, you know, I've managed to create just a little bit of counterplay to make white's life difficult. Rook a1, but then knight c3. All right, so finally I take the elephant, and white takes. Yeah, if I don't take the elephant, we're kind of running out of steam, and white's threatening to play knight c6, knight takes b4. And white's going to regroup, so e4, maybe knight d5 at some point. His first hand can come up, start coming into the game. So takes. I need to go back. I'm trying to hold the squares. White plays knight to c2, forking these two pieces, and I do like drop this piece. A more direct way would have actually just been knight c6, takes and takes. But Coolthing only needs to see one fork to win, so knight c2 is good enough. If I'd been smarter, I would have just brought the elephant back. Had the chance to do it here, and this would have put up a lot stiffer resistance. But instead I dropped the elephant. So these two are forked. I throw in a little intermezzo with rook to f1, but just king e2. And then I went back this way to just try to pester white, and it almost works. If king d3, then I can just go, well, if king d3, actually, I guess I can just retreat. But knight takes b4 is an incredible little trick that I missed. The idea of rook takes and just knight d5 and grab the rook. So, after knight takes b4, go king d6, hoping to go king c5. And I'm also threatening to grab on c3 now. But just knight e4 check shuts down my dreams. So I go back, I'm trying to get to b6, but just knight d5 check. The knights now just beautifully are covering every square. So king b7. I think I have to go king b8, but it's hard to keep up with all the knight forks, and so now I end up dropping this first hand, rook to b1, and now it's just a matter of time. I'm trying to think if I have any other chance at but no, there's not going to be any chance left in this game for me. White is just slowly moving everything up. e5 check. Yeah, there's just nothing there, and I'm just running. This is a good pawn structure for white because he can always hold the g3 pawn. So, I do play on, but there's not really anything here. I can't grab on b6 because of knight d5 check. So, actually I do. Just go ahead and resign here. So yeah, this was a pretty tough loss for me, particularly because I felt like I knew the opening a lot better than my opponent. I felt like I got these like really great chances. When white played d takes c5, I kind of knew that I'd blown my chance to play c takes myself and get a big position. So I kind of felt bad that I blew that chance. And then I also felt like, here I'm still better, and I just did not see this very creative sacrificial idea. So I kind of blew another potential shot at the advantage with d5. Probably just knight e6, knight b4. Looks like a pretty comfortable game overall for black. So, I was a little bit mad at myself for missing it. Yeah, I guess even if I'd gone into this, maybe there's like take, and maybe there's take and knight to e4, targeting these pawns. Just looking around, wonder if that might be an acceptable route for white to try to solve some problems. I mean, even so, yeah, maybe that is what. Maybe not. Maybe knight ec6 isn't the right way to play. But you know, black could certainly play like f5 first, just take away the e4 square, and then start going for this. Kind of a Mujana setup. That ought to be fine. Yeah. So, hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so you know, the chances I had, I think I just kind of missed them, and then the way that the game progressed, I didn't really play the most accurately around here, but uh, I think where I really just lost the thread was when I started to go this way. I didn't keep my grip on the C file, and I had an opportunity to keep that grip, and then at least I would have gotten something out of this game. And I would have had some long-term compensation. And then just when I realized like, oh no, white is going to take the C file, I could have regrouped one more time mentally and said, okay, well, I'm going to keep the C file for myself. And then at least in this kind of position, you know, at least I'm still trying. You know, and I have another shot to hold the end game. So kind of a tough game for me. But you know, some lessons learned, and uh, certainly trying to figure out how I'm going to work some of these little problems out of my game. Thank you guys.